Welcome to today's live proceedings of the National Assembly, this being the 7th day of March 2023. This broadcast is brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in conjunction with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. The broadcast is available on KBC Channel 1 as well as Bunge TV. The sitting this afternoon comes after a series of committee sittings. The members of Parliament, through their respective committees, have been handling other important businesses that Parliament undertakes. A number of committees have been sitting this morning to deliberate on a number of issues pertaining to the running of the country. Among the committees that have been sitting this morning is the Public Petitions Committee, which has been meeting the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Economic Planning on the consideration of public petitions. Another agenda that the Public Petitions Committee has been handling today is the funds spent by national government contrary to the provisions of the Constitution. The committee also did discuss compensation for Nyanza Western Caucus of internally displaced persons and also the completion of house units for Kibera residents funded by the World Bank. The committee did also schedule a meeting with the Controller of Budget regarding funds spent by the national government and also presentation of brief on public petition number 1 of 2023 on the implementation of Edu Afya medical scheme. Another business that the committee was scheduled to handle was the presentation of the brief on petition number 3 of 2023 regarding the management of the SGR services. That is the Public Petitions Committee that was holding a meeting this morning. The Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries also scheduled a meeting today. The agenda of the meeting was deliberations with the EACC and National Irrigation Authority on the petition regarding the EACC graft investigation on the West Kano irrigation scheme. The Public Accounts Committee also scheduled a meeting today. The agenda of the meeting being discussions with the PS for Blue Economy and Fisheries to examine the report of the Auditor General for the year ended 30th June 2021. The committees which also scheduled their deliberations and meetings today included the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning, the agenda being the meeting with the Council of Governors regarding the Equalization Fund Bill. If you're just joining us, the business of the National Assembly is about to begin on this 7th day of March 2023. This broadcast is available on YouTube, courtesy of the Parliament of Kenya YouTube channel. The broadcast is also available on KBC Channel 1 as well as Bunge TV on Signet. Speaker Moses Wetangula is now walking into the chambers to oversee the business of the National Assembly this afternoon.
Waheshimiwa, na tuombe. Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu, ambaye kwa hekima na wema wako umetumia nyadhifa za viongozi na mabunge kwa ustawi wa jamii na utawala wa haki wa wanadamu, tukusihi utazame kwa neema nyingi sisi watumishi wako ambao wameridhika kutuita ili tutekeleze shughuli muhimu za jamhuri yetu. Twakuomba uteremshie baraka zako sisi tuliokutanika hapa, na utujalie tuyatende na kufikiria mambo yote yatakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili utukufu na sifa zako ziendelezwe, na ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi yetu na wale ambao haja zao umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amen. We have quorum to transact business. Clerk.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Number 4, petitions.
Honorable members, I have 2 petitions to convey to the House. The first petition is regarding enactment of legislation to criminalize and prescribe penalties for the crime of enforced disappearance. Honorable members, Article 119 of the Constitution accords any person the right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority. Further, Standing Order 2252B requires the Speaker to report to the House any petition other than those presented by a member. In this regard, honorable members, I wish to report to the House that my office has received a petition from one Dr. Annette Mbogo, the Executive Director of Kituo cha Sheria Legal Advice Center, calling for enactment of legislation to criminalize and prescribe penalties for the crime of enforced disappearance. The petitioner claims that the organization has worked closely with the victims of cases of extrajudicial killings and disappearances in the country since 2007 and documented a total of 1,201 killings and 272 enforced disappearances, with most of the incidences having occurred in the hands of the police and other security agencies. The petitioner further claims that in 2021, Kenya reported approximately 43 cases of disappearances of persons who are last seen in police custody or who are abducted by persons believed to be police officers. Honorable members, the petition highlights the northern and coast regions as being hotspots for such incidences to counter terrorism operations, and cites other instances including the retrieving of at least 20 bodies from River Yala. The petitioner is concerned that there is no effective legal remedy available through law to hold suspects accountable for forcibly disappearing victims whose whereabouts remain unknown or denied. Efforts to have the matter addressed through filing of a constitutional petition seeking that the Attorney General does request the President to form a judicial commission of inquiry to look into the rampant cases of enforced disappearances have not been fruitful. The petitioner therefore prays that the National Assembly enacts laws that will expressly criminalize and prescribe penalties for the crime of enforced disappearance. Honorable members, having established that the matter raised in the petition is well within the authority of this House, and further that the matters raised in this petition are not pending before any court of law, constitutional or legal body, I hereby commit the petition to the Public Petitions Committee for consideration pursuant to Standing Order 208A. The committee is required to consider the petition and report its findings to the House and to the petitioner in accordance with the Standing Order 2272. I thank you. Honorable members at the door, at the back, can take their seats. Take the nearest seat. Take the nearest seats, members. The second petition, honorable members, is regarding the state of food security in the country. Honorable members, Article 119 of the Constitution gives right to any person to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority. Further, Standing Order 2252B requires the Speaker to report to the House any petition other than those presented by a member. In this regard, honorable members, I wish to report to the House that my office has received a petition from one Shadrach Agaki of identification card number 27414999, a citizen with interest in the worrying state of food security in the country. The petitioner states that food insecurity continues to affect the lives of many Kenyans contrary to the aspirations espoused in Article 43(1)(c) of the Constitution that obligates the state to ensure that every citizen is free from hunger and have adequate food of acceptable quantity and quality. Honorable members, the petitioner is concerned that various policies, initiatives, and programs that have been implemented in an attempt to address food insecurity have been unsuccessful. He alludes to the fact that no significant efforts have been made to realize optimum yield in Kenya's different ecological zones. The petitioner therefore prays that the National Assembly amends the Food Security Act with the aim of achieving a clear legal framework and coordination mechanism between the national and county governments in addressing food and nutritional insecurity in the country. Honorable members, having established that the matter raised in the petition is well within the authority of this House, and further the matters raised in this petition are not pending before any court of law, constitutional or legal body, I hereby commit the petition to the Public Petitions Committee for consideration pursuant to Standing Order 208A. The committee is required to consider the petition and report its findings to the House and to the petitioner in accordance with Standing Order 2272. I thank you. Honorable members, standing orders give us an opportunity to comment on such petitions for at least 30 minutes. You've heard the two petitions, one on food security, one on forced disappearances. I'll give you an opportunity to make your comments. The screen is full as usual. I don't know if it's about this petition or about other businesses coming. Those who want to comment, I suggest you go to intervention, which is already full as well. I will start with James Wandai, Ugunja. It is good to mention which petition you are particularly commenting on, food security or disappearances.
Let me comment on the petition on enforced disappearances, because that's a very, very, very serious issue that goes to the heart of our Bill of Rights as a country. Mr. Speaker, that is a timely petition in my view, and I don't even think the manner in which it is couched will give us the adequate attention that it requires, because in my view, this is a matter that requires the establishment of a commission of inquiry. Even as we address future cases of enforced disappearances, we must go to the root of this matter by investigating past incidences, past cases of enforced disappearances. I have seen the petitioner is making reference to police or security agents, but that as it may. But I think this goes beyond the police and security agents. There could be people, of course, who are using these agents or agencies to effect these enforced disappearances. And therefore, it's a very timely issue, and that needs to be addressed with the utmost seriousness that it surely deserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Wandai. Didimas Barasa.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also want to comment on this petition on forced disappearances, and just being cautious, Honorable Speaker, that I hope it excludes, I come from a region where we still have traditional marriages where a girl can disappear for 2 weeks, then come back after maybe 3 weeks. I hope this excludes criminalizing this type of behavior. Secondly, I'm happy that the Member of Parliament for Unguja is now supporting that actually forced disappearance should be criminalized. You know, when Kenyans were disappearing in the previous regime, we were saying it's wrong, and I'm happy that his opposition now adds impetus to what all of us will want to ensure that nobody should disappear for whatever reasons, and any disappearance must be meted with the full force of law, and that must be, I hope that this petition will be expedited and the recommendations implemented. Honorable Speaker, I support.
Gitonga Murugara.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, enforced disappearance is an act of extrajudicial killing. And this is rampant in the country, as witnessed by bodies being retrieved from Yala River. A regime that was there at independence and after independence used to tell people, you cross the path of the government and you find yourself in Ngong Forest. That appears to have continued up to today. As we speak, and from Daraka in the year 2017, a young man known as Mwenda had complained to the International Justice Mission, and him and his lawyer and the driver were actually killed. Thank heavens that those killers were recently sentenced to death. It actually behoves on us to move the speed, pass laws that criminalize any forced disappearance so that we can value the right to life in the country. As regards the food security, it's vitally important that we actually become self-sustaining in food. It's vitally important that we stop crying we stop seeing our people dying because of lack of food. This is a basic right. We just need to get it right, and we would be away from famines, from drought, and from food insecurity, which is rampant at the present moment in time. Let us amend the Act, make food security one of the matters that we must bring to book, so that at the end of the day, the country has enough food for everyone. Quality food and quantity food. Thank you very much.
Robert Mbui, Kadhiani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. I also want to add my voice to the issue regarding the state of food security in the country. And I want to say that, Mr. Speaker, if the situation is actually not addressed now, and these rains do not do as well as the meteorological department is proposing, then we may start losing lives as a result of food insecurity. You remember recently, Mr. Speaker, there was a school in somewhere, I think in Kajiado, where the bell for lunch rang, and then instead of the children queuing, the parents actually rushed into the school to queue for food. So there's a major problem. And I want to just urge that the current regime, Kenya Kwanza, needs to become responsive to the needs of the people. I know that they have talked about how not to subsidize food, but you know, sometimes extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures. So I want to say that this issue of food security needs to be addressed. The government needs to put their best foot forward, and we must nip this in the bud. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Robert. Badi Jomvu.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Pia mimi Mheshimiwa Spika naungana na wenzangu ili kuweza kuchangia juu ya hizi petition mbili. Mheshimiwa Spika, mwanzo ni katika ile hali ya kuweza kujikimu, Mheshimiwa Spika, katika hali ya chakula. Na leo Mheshimiwa Spika, watu wote katika nchi hii ya Kenya wanalia juu ya ongezeko la bei ya chakula. Lakini nataka kusema ni lazima Mheshimiwa Spika kuwe na uongozi mzuri.
Order, honorable members at the back who are holding a kamkunji in the chamber. Order.
Koyo.
Order, honorable members. If you want to have a conversation, there are sufficient corridors out there. Go on, honorable member. Endelea Mheshimiwa.
Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, nikiangalia hali hii lazima kuwe na uongozi mzuri. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, tukiangalia katika hii mambo ya bei ya chakula, hali ni mbaya sana katika nchi kwa wakati huu. Lakini pia tukiangalia katika nchi hii ya Kenya, Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna mahali ambako kulikuwa kunaitwa Galana Kulalu, ambako watu wa Israeli walikuja pale ili kuweza kutaka kusaidiana na nchi hii katika mambo ya food production ama katika kukuza chakula. Lakini tukiangalia watu wale, Mheshimiwa Spika, walifanyiwa finyange nyingi sana mpaka mwisho wakaondoka hapa nchini. Mheshimiwa, niko na imani wako local investors ama wako wale ambao wameweza kujitolea wafanya biashara ambao watataka kufanya kazi hiyo ya ukuzaji wa chakula pale Galana Kulalu. Kubwa ambalo mimi naliomba ni kuona kwa serikali iweze kuunga mkono ili kazi ile waweze kuifanya na matatizo haya yaweze pia kutuondokea. Mheshimiwa Spika, katika petition ya pili tukiangalia hasa kule Mombasa tunakotoka, watoto wengi sana walikuwa napotea kwa kisababu cha kuwa ati ni Al-Shabaab. Hakuna sababu yoyote ambayo ilikuwa inaonyesha vijana hao kwa nini wanatuhumiwa. Lakini serikali waona kijana ameshikwa akiangaliwa mara 2-3 hapatikani. Kwa hivyo ni lazima tuone kwa serikali ilinde watu wake na kuwa na ubinadamu katika kuona kuwa wanawashughulikia. Ikiwa kuna jambo lolote, mtu asipotezwe, aweze kupatikana, ushahidi upatikane, aweze kuchukuliwa hatua. Kwa hivyo kwa hayo Mheshimiwa Spika, nashukuru kwa kunipatia nafasi hii na mimi pia kuchangia katika petition hizi mbili. Asante.
Robert Bukose Endebes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, first I want to congratulate you on your award of your honorary PhD by Masinde Muliro University. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, I want to make a comment on the extrajudicial killings, that when the Committee on Petitions will be looking at amending the law, they should not just look at the extrajudicial killings in terms of police people disappearance, but they should also look at it in terms of, we've seen cases of police, whether Kenya Forest Rangers, whether KWS, killing Kenyans without any proper justification. And I think that is also extrajudicial killings, and it should be covered in all. Because, Honorable Speaker, I've heard several cases of KWS askaris killing people in Mount Elgon Lodge who have just gone to look for firewood. So I think this is a very important petition. On issues of food security, Honorable Speaker, as the committee looks at it, we have other potential areas where we can grow our food. It's not just Kulalu scheme, but we have many ADC farms, especially in my constituents, which are lying idle and could be able to be utilized for proper food production. And we can also harness issues of water under gravity to be able to make sure that these lands provide enough food to feed this country. With those few remarks, I support.
Dido Raso Saku.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, on judicial, extrajudicial killing and disappearances. This is the strategy of a weak state that is not able to police its citizens adequately. As I'm speaking from the floor of the House, 2 of my constituents were actually abducted almost 1 year ago, and they are nowhere to be seen. Those who are involved are believed to be persons who are associated with security of the state. Honorable Speaker, unless this matter is criminalized, Kenyans' lives will continue to be wasted with impunity. On the issue of food security, I think for those of us who are from famine-stricken areas, this is what we see today, that Kenya needs to be food secure so that lives are not lost. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
David Posing, Pokoti South.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to make comments on the petitions. And let me start with the petition, Honorable Speaker, of forced disappearance. Speaker, this is a fundamental petition, very important petition. And I would wish that the petitioner or the committee, Honorable Speaker, may invite some members, honorable members here, so that they can also benefit from their experience, Honorable Speaker. And one of my comments is that they should not look at the law only, Speaker. They should also look at a commission of inquiry. We need a commission of inquiry, Speaker, on these extrajudicial activities, Speaker. And I come from a community which, Honorable Speaker, lives in fear of extrajudicial killing, Honorable Speaker, and forced disappearance. And that's the Pokot people. And of course, Speaker, you heard that I was on news for bad reasons or good reasons, maybe 2 weeks ago, that I was picked, Honorable Speaker, from my office. And what did I do, Speaker? Because of that fear of extrajudicial killing, some boys were arrested from my community. And we were fearing that they were actually going to be hanged or killed or disappear, Honorable Speaker, as it has been in history in my community, Honorable Speaker, of the Pokot people. So what I did, I had to escort them. I had to go to court, sat there, and made sure, the Speaker, that when they were released from court, that at least they went home, Honorable Speaker, safely. And whatever means they went home, Honorable Speaker, is something that is good for me to say, I better save our people, Honorable Speaker. And there was no sin I committed, because our community, Honorable Speaker, live in fear of extrajudicial killing every day. I want to urge this committee, Honorable Speaker, to be very careful and to be sensitive and to call some of us so that we can share with them our experience, Honorable Speaker. But start, first of all, with a commission of inquiry, Honorable Speaker. I support it.
Wangare Martha Gilgil.
Asante Bwana Spika, hata mimi natoa maoni kulingana na dua hili lililowasilishwa kwenye bunge hili na mkurugenzi kutoka kituo cha sheria kuhusu kutoweka kwa lazima kwa binadamu. Na Bwana Spika, haya maneno ni mambo ya kikatiba, ni mambo ya haki za binadamu, na nafikiri jamii nyingi zimeumia sana. Na ukiangalia kwa jinsia Bwana Spika, wale ambao mara nyingi wanatoweka ni wanaume. Unapata watoto kwamba wanabaki mayatima, kunabaki wajane, wanawake wanabaki wajane Bwana Spika. Na kamati hii tunaomba kwamba iangalie, unajua kuna mambo ambayo unaweza poteza binadamu Bwana Spika, lakini afadhali hata upate mwili. Kumefika mahali mpaka familia zinaomba zipate tu mili wazike waweze kusahau. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, nikiangalia kama juzi mwaka wa 2021 kuna wakili mmoja kutoka kijiji kinaitwa Miti Mingi kule Gilgil alitoweka, na hata waleo hatujui yako wapi Bwana Spika. Watoto wake wanahangaika, wazazi wanahangaika. Kwa hivyo tutatumaini kwamba wataleta haya mambo na wataleta ripoti hiyo ya mambo haya kwenye bunge hili, ndio tuweze kuhakikisha kwamba mambo ya kutoweka huku kutakuwa kukiweza kukua jinai na ichukuliwe hatua kama inavyofaa. Asante Bwana Spika.
Rueda Obo, Lamu East.
Asante Bwana Spika, kunipatia nafasi nami kuchangia katika ombi lilotumwa kuhusu watu kupotea kiholela. Bwana Spika, sisi Lamu County tumekuwa waathiriwa sana. Listi ni ndefu tukitoa wale watu wetu walopotea na hatuwajui wako wapi mpaka sasa. Bwana Spika, listi hiyo nikitoa nafikiri itakuwa hata sipati la kuzungumza, itakuwa ni kutaja hayo majina peke yake. Bwana Spika, sisi kwetu tulikuwa tukifikiria sana ni issue za Al-Shabaab na vile tuko mpakani. Lakini Bwana Spika, la kusikitisha zaidi na la kuchanganya watu zaidi huko Lamu, kwa karibu tuliambiwa mauaji ya Lamu County hauhusiani na Al-Shabaab na husiana na mashamba. Sasa watu wangu wametatizika zaidi, hawajui wanaua nani. Kwa nini watu wetu wakimbie, wateswe kwa sababu ya Al-Shabaab, na kumbe kuna kiongozi ambaye ajua wanaua watu ni nani? Kwa hivyo mimi nimefurahi ombi hili kuja. Hata mimi itabidi niifanye kama ni statement au kama ni petition. Serikali ituambie kwamba ni nani wanaua watu Lamu, manake imetatiza watu. Siku nyingi imekuwa tukifikiria ni Al-Shabaab ndo wanaua watu, kumbe si Al-Shabaab, ni mambo ya ardhi. Na alosema kiongozi inamaanisha anawajua wanaua watu Lamu County, na itakuwa vizuri kwa sababu imetua affect sana, imetutatiza sisi. Kule tunategemea utalii, watalii wamekuwa hawaji, askari wengi, hizi convoy nyingi za ukienda kama mtalii ukiona majeshi wengi unashangaa unaenda pahali gani, wanaogopa narudi njiani. Na pesa nyingi ya serikali imekuwa ikitumika kwa lindaboni tukijua ni Al-Shabaab, na watu wanapotea ovyo ovyo. Kwa hivyo sasa hii tumejua, tunataka serikali jitolee waziwazi, tujue wanaua watu mkina nani na uchumi wetu uweze kuendelea Lamu County. Asante Bwana Spika.
Rindikiri Mugambi Buri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to comment on this issue of extrajudicial killing and unexplained disappearance of Kenyan citizen. Mr. Speaker, in the history of government, the government between 2017 and 2022, we witnessed a lot of disappearance of Kenyan citizens who were never given an opportunity to know exactly what was happening. Mr. Speaker, one of my constituents by the name Mwenda Bijewe disappeared in 2021. And up to today, there hasn't been any official communication from the government. Incidentally, Mr. Speaker, even the office of the DCI then was manned by somebody from my constituency. The attempt by the family to contact the office of the DCI, the office of the government prosecutor, the office of the IG, no family member or internal parties were given opportunity to write a statement, and they were never given a statement explaining the circumstances under which this gentleman disappeared. Mr. Speaker, I think time has come that the security organs in charge of maintaining peace in this country should start valuing the life of Kenyans. We have been told there are so many bodies that have been discovered in Yala River, in Nyanza, others in Mount Kenya, Aberdares, and so many other places. So I join my colleague to say time has come to change the law and demand that the government enforce always, whenever the case has been reported to the government to take measures. On the food security, this is coming handy. I think witnessing what the food security because of drought is happening, I support that we need to amend the Food Security Act so that we start dealing with this case in a more detailed manner, and that which is going to benefit the entire country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Abraham Kirwa Mosop. Give him the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute to this motion about the food security. Mr. Speaker, Kenya as a country has not been able to feed itself since independence. Despite the fact that we say that agriculture is the backbone of this country, it contributes 33% of our GDP from agriculture, but as a nation, we've not been able to feed ourselves for reasons unknown. If you look at the amount of food we produce, somebody mentioned Kulalu farm that we had thought it might be of help. We look at areas like Rift Valley, which we consider it as the breadbasket of this country, is not able to produce enough food to feed the citizens of this country. So something needs to happen. If we need to go back and relook at the seeds that we are using in this country, so that we have to change. If we have to get advanced seeds that is going to allow farmers to produce more crops, then that's what needs to happen. And then we have to look at other ways on how this country we cannot have existed since independence and we are not able to feed our own people. The drought, of course, has made it worse because we have experienced the worst drought in years. We've never had this kind of drought in this country. But it is not enough after almost so many years that the country cannot feed itself. We have countries like Israel, which actually is in the desert, but it's able to feed its citizens. But Kenya, we get a lot of rainfall, we have a lot of greenery, but at the same time, we've not been able to feed our people. So it's time to sit down as a nation and actually reconsider our farming methods and ways we can actually, there are people who own trucks and trucks of land, but they are not using it to produce enough food for our country. So we have to sit down and reconsider our farming methods. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of people actually disappearing without knowing where they've gone, I don't believe in aliens, and I don't believe aliens come to this country to take people away. These people disappear because somebody somewhere played a game or killed them or took them away. And it is the responsibility of any government to provide security and protection to its people. So these people stories of people disappearing without knowing where they went has to be investigated. It is the responsibility of our government to make sure that actually every citizen is guaranteed security, and if somebody disappears and nobody knows, it is them to investigate and really find out where and why did somebody disappear. Thank you again, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute.
Omondi Karoli, Suba South.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to talk about these two issues. The first one, let me start with the food security issue before I come to forced disappearance. I think the poverty levels in Kenya today, the food poverty levels in Kenya today are in excess of 50%. And I think less than 60% of our families have 3 square meals a day. Majority, I think, are on 1. But this is not
largely because of adverse weather or climate change. I think it is because of the way we have handled our land tenure system. All the large farms that used to be in Kenya some 30, 40 years ago have been subdivided into small lots because of the way we practice agriculture and the way we also live as a people. And I think the government has not been doing enough to try and help consolidation. Food security is a function of mechanized agriculture. It is not a function of subsistence farming. So we can talk about seeds, we can talk about manure, we can talk about fertilizers. But as long as our farm holdings are of such size that cannot afford to be mechanized, there will never be a time when Kenya will be food secure. And I think that is where we should start. Either we aggregate our farming areas and try to create cooperatives that can then mechanize farming the way the white people do it or used to do it, or we stare at permanent food insecurity. Secondly, I think we need to make a deliberate effort. The water flows today in Kenya where you could do irrigation are from Nakuru to the lake region and western parts of Kenya. I think that is where we should focus on irrigation for purposes of our food security. And I think this issue, coupled with shortage of water, will probably create a lot of conflicts amongst communities in the future. Mr. Speaker, on forced or enforced disappearances, where the state deliberately abducts or imprisons people directly or through third parties in concert with such parties for political reasons, is very common. And I think it is something that we need to tackle very hard, together with the other issue of extrajudicial killings. But tied to that, I think more lives are also being lost on killings where the state is not involved. Like the deaths that come by cattle rustling, farm invasions, and all those kind of things. I think we need to relook at the legal framework, how we deal with these issues. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Owen Bayer.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, Dr. Moses Wetangula. Honorable Speaker, I want to thank the Director of Kitocha Sheria for this petition, because Kitocha Sheria has done extensive work on enforced disappearance. But more so, Honorable Speaker, there's a time in East Africa where we only associated disappearance of people to the regime in Uganda when Idi Amin Dada was president. And a lot of bodies were found in Lake Victoria and River Nile. But in the past regime, this country actually saw the same things that used to happen in Uganda during the regime of Idi Amin Dada. Honorable Speaker, very many young people in Mombasa, and especially at the coast, just a suspicion that they were looking different, would have them either disappear to the Savo forest or to the rivers. It's important as a country we come to know the truth. Who was killing these people? Who was behind this? I know when the current the president came into power, he took a purge at the DCI. But I also want to say that it is not enough to just take a purge on some officials at the DCI. We want to go to the bottom of it and know who killed those many people whose bodies were found at River Yala. Who are these people? Why were they being killed? Why is it that the previous government tolerated these killings? These are important things. And I think Kitocha Sheria has documented these cases. They have the information, and I would like the Committee on Petitions to delve into the depth of it so that Kenyans can know where their loved ones went, why they went where they went, and who was behind that. Honorable Speaker, this is important for this country to move forward so that we are able to know what happened. If we must forgive, we forgive and move forward, but people must know where they went. There are very many cases in my constituency where young people disappeared. Young people from Malindi constituency, or Malindi, the neighboring town, disappeared just because they had a light skin, they had different hair, and they wore a turban. Just that, or they wore a kofia. And that would force a young person to just disappear. Honorable Speaker, it's very important that we go to the depth of it, and I want to thank Dr. Annette Mbogo for this petition. Secondly, food security is a problem right now. With climate change and all that, I think the second petition is important for this country. We need to look at our framework on food production, food security, so that we can move forward. This country does not only suffer from high prices, but also suffers from the drought that we have, the loss of animals, the loss of crop, all these are important things. So, Mr. Speaker, these two petitions, I want to urge the Committee on Petitions to look at them closely and give this House a report that we're able to sit down and discuss and move forward as a country. I thank you.
Deco Dalo, Garissa Town. Give him the mic. There you are.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the petition, especially on the one of extrajudicial killing and forced disappearances. I'm a victim of these heinous crimes, which we suspect the security agencies are involved. Mr. Speaker, from the constituency I come from, we have so many formations and units of different agencies or security agencies whom we don't know who is responsible for them, in that when somebody disappears, we do not know who exactly, and when we ask those in leadership of the security agencies in the region, they always point fingers in different units and formations. We support this, or rather I support this petition, during the last election campaigns, the President, as the leader of the Kenya Kwanza, had promised us, as people of the region, that this issue will be addressed effectively in the next government, which is now in place. We want the government to take responsibility for this. We have mothers who have lost their sons. We have women who have lost their husbands. We have children who have lost their fathers and the only breadwinners. So I support this petition, and it's timely, and we need this to be taken seriously by the petition committee. Thank you.
Member for Samburu East, Jackson.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Speaker, I want to comment on these forced disappearances. And I think, Honorable Speaker, right now Kenyans are living in a lot of fear because of these forced disappearances. And Speaker, when the Kenya Kwanza government came in power, the President assured the Kenyan that these forced disappearances will not be there. But I want to say, Mr. Speaker, it is rampant now. There are so many people disappearing, and nobody knows where they are. And I think this is the high time, Mr. Speaker, that we should deal with this issue of people disappearing. About the food security, Honorable Speaker, I think as a country, we need to deal in this issue of food secure, because right now there is nowhere maybe we can get enough food. And I think we have the power and the ability to make Kenya food secure. We only need to do what is required. Otherwise, I support the petition. Thank you.
Tim Wanyonyi. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also want to make comments on the forced disappearance. One, Mr. Speaker, forced disappearance is not just an isolated act. It is a well-designed and orchestrated by people who are paid by some influential people, Mr. Speaker, to cause the disappearance of certain people. Sometimes it has happened even in the Mr. Speaker, this is an act, it borders on the act of terrorism, and many people who have disappeared, and we have seen many bodies found in River Yala. And this, Mr. Speaker, the police have never done an investigation and concluded any of these acts. So we need to criminalize this thing and put it in legislation so that the lives of Kenyans are protected. And one of the primary role of government is to protect the life of Kenyans. And this is an area that we need to address. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of food security, Mr. Speaker, recently I listened to the speech by the President of Zimbabwe, and he highlighted how Zimbabwe has managed to secure itself food-wise, and the plans they came up with. And these same plans, we have them here, Mr. Speaker. If we put them in use and implement all those, Mr. Speaker, the legislation we have done, we can have food security in this country. And the government must be serious about it because Kenyans are suffering. We are using a lot of our foreign exchange to import food when Kenya is capable of producing enough food to feed its people. So, Mr. Speaker, I think this is a very deliberate effort that most Kenyans must. And the government must also buy food from farmers. The farmers who are producing food and some of them rotting in the farms. And then we find that the same government is importing food when the farmers are stuck with the food in the farms. So if we do this, then we will be able to feed our people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Aburi, what is the problem? Can you give Mpuri?
My point of order, Mr. Speaker, there's a lot of Kampunji inside here, so we can't hear what he is saying.
The Honorable Murugara and your team, you are causing unnecessary mayhem in the House. Let's observe some order. The member who is standing talking to member for Kamkunji, take your seat. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I rise to support this petition by Madam Annette Mbogo, who the Deputy Leader of Majority tells me is from Kilifi County, and a very good scholar and lawyer. Honorable Speaker, in support of this petition, she avers, Honorable Speaker, that she has, or her organization has made efforts to have this matter addressed through the filing of a constitutional petition asking the Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya to request His Excellency the President to form a judicial commission of inquiry to look into the rampant cases of enforced disappearances, and the same has not been fruitful. Honorable Chair, Speaker, I do not know whether the chair of this committee is in the House, but probably this should be amongst the recommendations that the committee should come up with, that we do institute a commission of inquiry to get to the root cause of why people are forced to disappear. This thing we are calling forced disappearances, Mr. Speaker, and I don't know what is a forced disappearance, because what we are calling forced disappearances, Honorable Speaker, are outright killings, because there is no way you can disappear into thin air and never be found. Honorable Speaker, I also have cases in my constituency. A son to Amze Mishuki, who is my very good friend, who just disappeared into thin air. And as the petitioner avers in this petition, Honorable Speaker, in most of these cases, these are people who are allegedly arrested by people who claim to be policemen. And let us be fair, Honorable Speaker, and honest to ourselves. It is not just people who claim to be policemen. It has been actually policemen who have been abducting people in this country and killing them in broad daylight. Honorable Speaker, it is sad that when His Excellency the President disbanded what was called the SSU, I don't know special what, that unit, which was a murderous unit, Honorable Speaker, under the office of the DCI. There are many people who sought to use that as an opportunity to make politics out of it. And I was shocked, Honorable Speaker, that the people who are saying No, now you are targeting the people who served in the former regime. You are targeting DCI Kinoti. What is targeting DCI Kinoti and those who are in office when it was official government policy to force disappearances of Kenyans and kill Kenyans and dump their bodies in River Yala, in River Tana? You remember, Honorable Speaker, I think close to 30 bodies were fished out of River Yala. Another close to 20 bodies were fished out of River Tana, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, we cannot say that anybody is being targeted. And I know because some of them today have been invited to the DCI on small matters. When the time comes, I want to ask DCI Amin not to fear anybody. Those who sanctioned and commissioned the extrajudicial killings of very many innocent Kenyans must answer, Honorable Speaker. And we must be a nation where we don't bury our history in the sand. The only reason, Honorable Speaker, why things keep repeating themselves and it get into a vicious cycle of repeating the same mistakes as a country is because we never hold anybody to account. It cannot be, Honorable Speaker, that, as this petitioner says, close to 1,200 people have disappeared into thin air. And you didn't see them rise with the Holy Spirit like Jesus Christ did. They just disappeared. Some their bodies are found, others their bodies are never found, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, we must get to the root cause of all these things, Honorable Speaker. And I am glad, Honorable Speaker, that under this regime, none other than His Excellency President William Ruto has asserted that every person who is arrested by a police officer must be presented before a police station, recorded in an OB, and charged before a court of law, and not to be killed, as was happening before, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it is not just cases of terrorism. Honorable Speaker, you know that famous saying that says when they came for journalists, we were quiet because we were not them. When they went for farmers, we were quiet, we were not them. Until they came for you. That is what happened in this country, Honorable Speaker. We tolerated the extrajudicial killings of certain communities in this country on the basis that they were working with terrorists. And eventually, Honorable Speaker, it came to us. It came to our own neighborhoods. I do not think there is any member of parliament who, if not in your constituency, in your county, you know someone who has been a subject of these enforced disappearances and extrajudicial killings, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, as a responsible house, as leaders who value the sanctity of life, we must stand up to be counted. And I really want to challenge the Public Petitions Committee to not only ensure that there are legal mechanisms put in place, and that is a challenge to all of us as a house, but to also ensure that we do not bury what happened in yesteryears under the sand. Whether it is DCI Kinoti, who was in charge of DCI, whether it is Fred Matiang'i, who was the minister in charge, or whether it is the ultimate authority where the buck stopped, the office of the president, people who must be held to account for the extrajudicial killings of Kenya must and should be held to account. And this House must rise to the occasion to ensure that that happens by recommending a commission of inquiry.
Order majority, yes. Honorable TJ Kajwang. Okay. Give the Honorable
Mr.
TJ.
Speaker, the member for Kikuyu, as he was speaking very well, but I do not know at what point he became, he changed from being member of Kikuyu to being the majority leader. Because then when he became a majority leader, he assumed certain things that should not happen on this floor. Mr. Speaker, he has been mentioning names, whereas I don't hold brief for anybody, anywhere, however mentioned. But our standing orders and the Constitution itself is clear that no one would be mentioned adversely without giving him a hearing or without his presence. Mr. Speaker, is it in order to mention those people that he has named in person? and yet they do not have an opportunity to defend themselves, Mr. Speaker.
Majority.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I thought the Honorable TJ is usually rattled if I mention the Ruaraka land scandal and Ruaraka constituency, but today I didn't. I only mentioned people who were in office at the time crimes against humanity were carried out in this country. And the person who was in charge of DCI is the person that I have named, DCI Kinoti. The person who was in charge of the interior was CS Matiangi, who happens to have visited the DCI today in poetic justice, Honorable Speaker. And the person where the buck stopped was the president. Just like today, the buck stops in the office of the President of the Republic of Kenya, William Ruto, if there are any extrajudicial killings.
Honorable Kajwang, what is out of order? He has not adversely mentioned anybody. He simply said they were in office and they were.
That's not what he said, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
yes,
maybe you may want when you retire to look at the Hansard.
Yes.
What he is saying is even making it worse. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to play politics with this. And we must never play politics with people who do not have a right to respond. All I said, all that the majority leader mentioned before he recasted his speech was that these persons should be investigated by some agencies. Now, for them to be investigated, it is an adverse finding which, in his opinion, he thinks that these people are somehow. Should he mention it as a matter of order, Mr. Speaker? I'm just asking, is he in order to mention people without giving them an opportunity to be heard? Isn't that simple,
I
Mr.
hear
Speaker?
you, Honorable Kajwang. Yeah. What I heard, and we'll check the Hansard, is that DCI was headed by Kinoti, which is fact. Interior Minister was Matiang'i, which was fact. And the head of state is fact. If he goes beyond that, I'll stop him.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for that protection. And you know, I am a very careful person with what I say here. And anywhere else I speak, Honorable Speaker. But let us not run away from the truth, Honorable Speaker. That was my point. And the committee should not be afraid. And all investigative authorities that would investigate such matters should not be afraid, Honorable Speaker. Because I was saying, if we do not deal with our past, Honorable Speaker, nothing stops other regimes, even in the future, from carrying out such extrajudicial killings, unless, Honorable Speaker, people are held to account. Honorable Speaker, you know where we came from before the elections? Many of us lived under extreme fear and threats to life, Honorable Speaker. I vividly recall, Honorable Speaker, when my good friend Dennis Itumbi was abducted just before Christmas of 2021. Honorable Speaker, the people who abducted Dennis Itumbi were actually police officers. And it took us not less than 6 hours to even get information from other officers who gave us information that indeed Dennis Itumbi was in the hands of a murderer's squad within the police, and specifically the agency that was then under DCI, Kinoti, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I'm only saying this committee should do this country a great honor in recommending that we institute a commission of inquiry such that, Honorable Speaker, it will be known the families of hundreds of Kenyans who have disappeared and they have never seen their bodies. Let them know, Honorable Speaker, what happened to their children and their family members. Hundreds of Kenyans, Honorable Speaker. Today, I was watching when I heard the member for Buri speak about Mijiwe. And I read the story of Mijiwe, I think, this Sunday in one of the dailies, Honorable Speaker, that the manner in which he disappeared, Honorable Speaker, leaves a lot of questions and there are pointers as to who would have been responsible for their disappearance. And the case of Mijiwe, the case of young Mishuki from my constituency, and many other Kenyans are similar, Honorable Speaker. And unless we dig and get to the root cause, you never know Many of the people who are forcing disappearances are still in some offices today. They still wield the same power and authority they wielded yesterday. Nothing will stop them from enforcing probably even the disappearance of members of parliament if we keep quiet. And that's why I'm saying we must not be quiet. Whether it is somebody in Northeastern, whether it is somebody from the coastal region, as Honorable and Baya says, or whether it is someone who is perceived to have been in groups like Mungiki or Chinkororo in Kisii, or whether it is someone that you disagree with politically. Because I was saying, Honorable Speaker, when we kept quiet, because we assumed it is a spirited fight against terrorists, and it is terrorists who are disappearing, they came for politicians. They came for political activists. They went after bloggers. Literally everybody, Honorable Speaker. You remember the threat people are being forced, Honorable Speaker, to subscribe to political ideals and ideologies that they do not believe in. But out of fear, Honorable Speaker, it is a fact. There are even people who are elected in parties they never desired to be in because they lived under extreme fear. They were not like Imani Ishongwa, who had the audacity to challenge people and tell them that the worst they can do. And I have said it, Honorable Speaker, I said it in an interview in one of the media houses, Honorable Speaker, in a recorded interview. And that particular media house, because of bias, and I have seen the attack they have leveled against my compatriot, the Honorable Aaron Cheriot, when he speaks about a biased media and cartels in the media houses, because they exist. And nobody is fighting media. We all want a free and objective media. And there is absolutely nothing wrong, Honorable Speaker, with even the media being biased. The media can be biased, but just be kind enough and tell Kenyans where you stand and what political leanings you subscribe to. It is not a secret, Honorable Speaker, that in America everybody knew that Fox News was with the Republicans and was supporting the former President Donald Trump. Many people knew CNN was supporting the Democrats, Honorable Speaker. So that you give Kenyans the latitude of choice to know, if I switch to this station, I will not be influenced by a media that pretends to be objective, but they are very subjective and biased. I was saying, Honorable Speaker, because I said in one of the media stations, in an interview, that at one point the Commander-in-Chief called me and threatened me. And I told him that the worst he could do was to kill me, but I would not change my position and my stand politically because of a fear of death. And I would never change my position on what I truly believe in, Honorable Speaker. And I say it here because those media houses, because they are biased, they could not even carry that interview. The entire interview, Honorable Speaker, was cancelled. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, let us not be fearful. Let us stand up for what is right and just. Life is sacred. Life is God-given, and no man has authority and power, however powerful they think they are, to take away another man's life, as happened, especially in the last 4 years, Honorable Speaker. It is sad, and we must never see our country degenerate again to the level it degenerated under the handshake regime of before August 8th, 2022. With that, Honorable Speaker, I really want to beg, and Honorable Speaker, forgive me because this is very emotional for me. I really want to beg the chair of this committee and members of the Public Petitions Committee not to treat this petition as any other petition. Let us take it with the weight it deserves. If we truly believe in God, if we truly believe in the sanctity of life, and that God is the only giver and taker of life, not governments, not presidents, not cabinet secretaries, not Inspector General of Police, not police corporals, nobody other than God should have the will and the power to give and take away life. Honorable Speaker, I submit.
Thank you. The last one on these petitions, the member for Kamkunji. Give him the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving this opportunity to me to speak on supporting the petition by our sister on judicial killings and disappearances. And I want to echo the feelings expressed by other members of Parliament. And I speak as a member of Parliament whose constituency has been seriously affected by this particular problem. I've had many, many disappearances of people in my constituency. I remember Abdi Karura and Dr. Waititu, who suddenly disappeared one day from Majengo. I remember the killing of Bashir Mohammed, a businessman who had a strong association with my constituency, and many, many others. And to be honest, this is not something that should happen in any functioning democracy. It is something that you expect to happen in countries where, with failed states, in countries where the government simply does not have the support and the authority of the population in which it is based on. So I fully support the idea of creating a commission of inquiry to look at this issue and to go in depth and bring closure to many families who have lost their loved ones. Many of the people who have been killed in this kind of circumstances and many of the disappearances are people like us. They are fathers, they are sons, they are husbands. They leave families who are completely baffled and traumatized up to this moment because they don't know what had happened to their loved ones. So it is our responsibility as members of Parliament to make sure that in this democracy, in this fragile democracy we have in our country, young and fragile democracy, that we make sure that no Kenyan life is taken with no reason whatsoever by faceless state organizations. And I agree also that many of those people who have done these deeds are still working in the government system. You can find them in offices, you would find them at police stations, and to be honest, this is something that can come to haunt us. And therefore it is very important that we bring justice to the families, we bring closure to this issue, and we make sure that this never ever happens in our country. And many people say that this happened only to some few people. It is not, it is widespread, and as has been mentioned here, many communities, not only my own community in Italy and Majengo has suffered, but many more communities have suffered by losing people through these disappearances carried out by known government agents. And in a number of times I have raised this issue in Parliament. The government ministry responsible for internal security has come to lie to this House to say they have no idea where these people have gone. They do not know who has taken them. And the question I ask every time, isn't it not your responsibility to protect the lives of all Kenyans? And if it is not you or your department that has done this thing, don't you have a responsibility to investigate and tell the Kenyan people what has happened? Otherwise, you must take responsibility. And I really urge the House to work on the creation of a task force or a commission of inquiry to be able to thoroughly investigate this matter and bring it to a closure so that the loved ones, the victims' families should know the truth of what happened to their children, what happened to their sons, what happened to their daughters. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity, and I support the petition.
Thank you, honorable members. Order, honorable members, allow me to go back to order number 3 and convey a message from the Senate. Honorable members, there's a message from the Senate on approval of appointment of a member to the Parliamentary Service Commission under Article 127(2)(d) of the Constitution. Honorable members, pursuant provision of Standing Order number 41, I wish to report to the House that I have received a message from the Senate regarding approval of appointment of a member to the Parliamentary Service Commission under Article 127(2)(d) of the Constitution. In the message, honorable members, the Speaker of the Senate conveys that the Senate on 28 February 2023 considered the report of the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights on the proposed appointment of Honorable Johnston Modama as a Commissioner of the Parliamentary Service Commission pursuant to Article 127(2)(d) of the Constitution, Section 9C of the Parliamentary Service Act, and Standing Order 77(3), and by a resolution approve the appointment of Honorable Johnston Modama as a Commissioner of the Parliamentary Service Commission. Honorable members, you may recall that on Wednesday, 15 February 2023, this House approved the appointment of Honorable Johnston Modama as a Commissioner of the Parliamentary Service Commission, following which I conveyed the fact to the Senate for concurrence. In this regard, the approval by the Senate of the said nominee concludes the bicameral appointment process contemplated under Article 127 of the Constitution. As a matter of fact, the Honorable Johnston Modama has already been sworn in and is discharging his duties as a commissioner. For the record, honorable members, I have already said that. I have sworn him in and he is already discharging his duties. I thank you. Honorable members, although it's a little late, there were two schools in the gallery. I'm told I've left, but we should acknowledge Sawagongo High School from Game Siaya was in the gallery, and Nairobi River Primary School from Embakasi West. I'm told they have left, but on your behalf and my own behalf, we welcome them to the House of Parliament. I'm sure they're still within the precincts. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Majority.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Tuesday, March 7th, 2023. Submission of nominees to Garissa and Bere North constituencies from the National Government Constituency Development Fund Board. 2, research on the state of certified secretaries, CS profession in Kenya from the Institute of Certified Secretaries. 3, performance audit report on provision of maternal and neonatal health care by the Ministry of Health from the Office of the Auditor General. 4, annual performance report for the period 1st July 2021 to 30th June 2022 from the Ministry of Defense. 5, reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2021 and the certificates therein. Kaimosi Friends University College, Siruti Technical and Vocational College, Awendo, Madera Technical and Vocational College, St. Paul's Kibabi Diploma Teachers Training College, Kongoni Technical and Vocational College, Kiminini Technical and Vocational College, Bunyala Technical and Vocational College, St. Augustine Teachers Training College, Iregi, Nzoia Sugar Company Limited, Kenya Wildlife Service, and Warehouse Receipt Systems Council. 6, reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of the following constituencies for the year ended 30th June 2021 and the certificates therein. Bondo, Lari, Hamisi, Garissa Township, Seme, Endebes, Funyula, Webuye East. I see I got the attention of Honorable Jikalo when I mentioned Seme. Chuka Igamba Ngombe, Dharaka, Kimilili, and Samburu North. 7 is a report of the Auditor General and financial statements of East Africa Skills, Transformation and Regional Integration Project, credit number 6334-KE, Kenya Coast National Polytechnic, for the year ended 30th June 2022 and the certificates therein. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Tuesday, the 7th of March 2023. Report of joint sitting of the National Assembly Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning and the Senate Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the approval hearing for Dr. Susan Jemtai Koech, the nominee for appointment to the position of Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member of the Kenya Parliament delegation to where? IPU, John Kiari.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And today, Tuesday, the 7th March 2023, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House. This is the report of the Kenya delegation to the 145th Assembly of the Interparliamentary Union, IPU, also known as the Parliament of Parliaments, and related meetings held in Nusa Dua, Indonesia, from the 20th to the 24th March 2022. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Honorable Kuria Kimani.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'd like to give a notice of motion for the approval of appointment of Deputy Governor of Central Bank of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, that taking into consideration the findings of the Judge Committee of the National Assembly Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning and the Senate Standing Committee on Finance and Budget in its report on vetting of one Dr. Susan Jemtai Koech for approval as Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, laid on the table of the House this afternoon, Tuesday, the 7th March 2023, and pursuant to Section 13B1 and 13C1 of the Central Bank of Kenya, Section 8.2 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act of 2011, and Standing Order 216(5)F of the National Assembly Standing Orders, that this House approves the appointment of Dr. Susan Jemtai Koech as a Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya. I submit, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable John Kiari.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that this House notes the report of the Kenya delegation to the 144th Assembly of the Interparliamentary Union, the IPU, and the related meetings that were held in Nusa Dua, Indonesia, from the 20th to the 24th of March 2022, laid on the table of this House this afternoon, which is Tuesday, the 7th of March 2023. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, House Business also agreed to the honorable member from Marakwet, is it West, to also give a notice of motion. Are you ready?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, before I give a notice of motion, Mr. Speaker, I beg to bring before you attention that as we speak, there is ongoing attacks against the Marakwet community in a rural ward by Kamket boys from Tiati. Mr. Speaker.
Order, honorable member. You are totally out of order. Honorable member, Honorable Kamket is a member of this House, and I know you are a new member. Acquaint yourself with the standing orders. If you want to discuss Honorable Kamket and or his boys, bring a motion, I'll give it to you and you'll debate him. But you don't just casually mention a colleague like that. It's not allowed under our standing orders. Can you give your notice of motion that I allowed you to do by starting saying, I beg to give notice of the following motion?
Mr. Speaker, I am very much aware of the standing order of this House. With a lot of respect, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue happening along Kerio Valley.
Order, honorable member, you are getting out of order. I have given you authority of the House Business Committee, sit down, member, to give notice of motion. If everybody is aware of the insecurity challenges we're having, last week I gave the honorable member for Turkana, the distinguished member Asinyen, and she very decently prosecuted a motion on insecurity in Turkana. I've done so for other members. I'll do so for you as well. What I will not do is to allow you to exhibit any unnecessary emotions on the floor or to attack a member without a motion. That I will not allow you. Proceed to give your notice of motion.
Very well, Mr. Speaker, I'm well guided. Mr. Speaker, I beg to give a notice of motion. I beg to give notice of the following motion, that aware that Article 42(1)(a) of the Constitution of Kenya provides for the right of every person to access the highest attainable standard of health, which includes the right to health care services. Further aware that cancer is among the leading causes of death in this country, noting that although the budgetary allocation for healthcare service is progressive, it is inadequate to cater for cancer prevention and care across the country. Further noting that cancer control in the country is hampered by inadequate cancer infrastructure and limited specialized human resource capacity, recognizing that a significant number of cancer patients do not complete the prescribed treatment due to the high cost of cancer management. Further recognizing that the Cancer Prevention and Control Act 2012 seeks to promote access to quality and affordable diagnostic and treatment services for persons with cancer, and to ensure sustainable capacity for the prevention and control of cancer. This House resolves that the government, through the National Treasury, establishes a National Cancer Prevention and Control Fund to promote prevention, control, and treatment of cancer in the country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Yes, Honourable Kamket, if you want to talk about what I've stopped the member from talking about, I'll stop you as well. Give him the mic.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate your protection, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, you've heard the Honourable Member.
There you go. I stop you. Sit down. Honourable Member, Honourable Kamket. Honourable Kamket. There are many forms of cancer. There are very many forms of cancer, but the Kamket cancer will not be allowed on the floor of this House. I now give the floor to the member for Nyali, who has also been allowed by House business to give notice of motion.
Shukran sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Naomba kutoa arifa ya hoja kuhusu kutekelezwa kwa sheria za kupiga marufuku mahusiano ya jinsia moja nchini Kenya. Kwamba tukifahamu kuwa familia ndiyo kiungo cha msingi cha jamii na kutambua kwamba utamaduni wa Kiafrika una thamani sana asasi ya ndoa ambayo inahakikisha kuendelea kwa binadamu kupitia uzazi, tukizingatia ukweli kwamba ibara ya 45(2) ya katiba inaeleza kuwa kila mtu mzima ana haki ya kufunga ndoa na mtu wa jinsia tofauti kwa msingi wa hiari baina ya wahusika. Tukitambua pia kwamba kifungu cha 162 cha kanuni ya adhabu kinamtia hatiani yeyote ambaye anashiriki tendo la ngono lisilo la kawaida na mtu yoyote kinyume na utaratibu wa asili. Tukizingatia kuwa mahusiano na ndoa za jinsia moja na ngono inayotokana na mahusiano haya ni kinyume na utaratibu wa asili. Tukisikitika kwamba kumekuwa na ongezeko la mahusiano ya jinsia moja nchini Kenya kutokana na usambazaji wa vitabu na machapisho yanayozua upotovu huo, tukitambua kwamba uchapishaji na usambazaji wa vyenzo zinazohusu mahusiano ya jinsia moja katika machapisho na vyombo vya habari una athari kali kwa maadili ya jamii kuhusu mwelekeo wa kijinsia. Tukihimiza kwamba kuna haja ya kutekeleza sheria ili kulinda na kuhifadhi maadili ya mahusiano ya jinsia tofauti katika taifa, tukifahamu kwamba hakuna uwezekano wa kuzaa kutokana na mahusiano ya ndoa za jinsia moja, tukihofia kwamba kuongezeka kwa mahusiano na ndoa za jinsia moja kunatia jamii ya wanadamu nchini katika hatari ya kutoweka. Bunge hili hivyo basi linaazimia kwamba serikali ipige marufuku mara moja uzungumziaji, uchapishaji na usambazaji wa taarifa zinazokuza mahusiano ya jinsia moja nchini na kuweka mikakati ya kudhibiti maudhui hayo kwa mujibu wa ibara ya 45(2) ya katiba na kifungu cha 162 cha sheria ya adhabu ili kuikinga jamii hasa watoto na vijana dhidi ya kufikiwa na mielekeo potovu ya mapenzi na ndoa ya jinsia moja, yaani ushoga na usagaji almaarufu kwa lugha ya Kimombo gayism and lesbian. Shukran sana Mheshimiwa Spika.
Thank you.
to a better education with those funds and also get a better living. Mr. Speaker, we are even I think I will bring a bill to this House that will even give the community shares percentage and also the county governments and the national government. Mr. Speaker, we also have a forest in Marsabit, beautiful rainforest in Marsabit. If you can remember, there was an elephant called Ahmed. He died in Marsabit and was brought to this museum here, museum in Nairobi. And you know, people in Marsabit are supposed to benefit from Ahmed the elephant. But we are not getting anything. That is our natural resources, Mr. Speaker. And if there is, this bill will go through, that means people in Marsabit can enjoy their natural resources also. Mr. Speaker, this bill will in fact make other investors who are going to come to any place to invest will know that there is something for the community when they are coming to invest, as opposed to what is happening now in a place like Marsabit. We are producing electricity, and the electricity comes to Nairobi, to being delivered to people in Nairobi. And in Marsabit, blackouts every night. So we are not getting what is rightfully ours. We don't have electricity to enjoy. The people here in Nairobi are enjoying this electricity, while people in Marsabit, children, women, are suffering. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill. Thank you very much.
Senator Mtata.
Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you for the opportunity you have given me to support this bill. The matter of natural resources in this country is very sad because we even do not know all that we own. And in supporting this bill, I will be pushing that if the government carries out a proper survey to map the resources available in this country. Just a few months ago, I don't know if you are aware that there's a gold rush in Busia. Some fellows struck gold and right now there's commotion on the ground. Everybody's rushing there. So I think we should not be discovering our minerals by chance. The counties need to be mapped in terms of resources and a proper regime put in place for exploiting those resources so that we can benefit from what is rightly ours. And these resources, and there's also a neglect of resources, natural resources, like if I go back to my county of Busia, you'll find that we have extensive resources that are not tapped. For example, I don't know if you know that it's only in Busia that you can find ancient cave paintings in this part of the world. I think the next you have to go to either Namibia or somewhere. But these cave paintings are there neglected, no serious investment put into them to be able to benefit the country in terms of tourism circuit and stuff like that. So you also find that you have huge resources in Lake Victoria which are neglected. We don't even have